Hi everyone, I'm James and this is my Spitfire. So this started out as a job I wasn't going to record, but I thought it was going to be a simple job, so of course it really wasn't. What I'm doing today is having a look at the horn and reinstating that in the steering wheel. When I got the car there was just a button on the dashboard and the pieces of the horn were mostly missing, so I ordered those parts and now I've got to get it all going. So I'll show you what I've done so far and then we'll see what we can do about finishing the job. So here in below the radiator, the horn sounders. They are new, but you can see I've reinstated the old wiring, checked it all out and it was absolutely fine. When I got the car there was some replacement wiring in place, so I've ripped all that out. So when I was working through it all, I started off by testing the horn relay, and here it was actually labelled as overdrive, so I think at some stage they were thinking about putting an overdrive in it. However, it didn't seem like any of the wiring that they labelled as overdrive went anywhere near where the overdrive switches and things would be. So who knows. However, I tested it all. All the wiring there is where it should be. Now, originally it was all mixed up, and it's all the correct original wiring. You'll see this here is the actual connection for the horn button. I've left that disconnected for now while I get the horn fixed and going, rather than accidentally shorting that out and scaring everybody to death with the horn beeping. If we look in here past the radiator underneath the right hand suspension, we can see on the end of the steering column the universal joint that connects it to the steering box. Getting ahead of things, I knew from previous inspection that the bonding lead was missing from this universal joint, so I put a new one in. That's needed because essentially the universal is kind of similar to the way a Rotoflex works, in that all your connections in the middle are rubber. So there's no electrical connection from one end of the universal to the other, so therefore your horn button would have nothing to earth on. Okay, if we zoom into the center of the steering wheel, you can see I've already got the new wiper rod in there, springing away, ready to work, and also got the clip for the button. To get that clip right, I actually ended up having to adjust it a bit. I found that the tension wasn't enough to hold the button in place against the spring tension of the wiper rod. So what I've ended up doing is I've bent the arms slightly so they have tension against the outside of the steering wheel center, and also put a couple of washers in behind the clip to make sure it sits in the right position and holds the horn nicely. So that all works now, and the horn button, which has that brass contact on it, just goes in. If I get it sitting in exactly the right place, just like that, nice and tidily. However, I got that all together, and when I press the button I don't get a connection to ground. So on goes the inspection with that. So you can see here I've disassembled, partially disassembled the steering column attachments so I can get the wiring in, but what I've found is, yeah, there isn't a connection to earth all the way down the steering column, but it does work some of the way. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so I've got the meter connected between the horn lead and the metal of the steering wheel, just to prove that the button works. If we press there, we can see 1.7 ohms on the meter, 1.6. That residual resistance is just down to some not great test leads. So if we go a little further and take this lead, well, let's go to the other end. Let's just go straight to ground. Here's a ground, otherwise known as transmission. Press the horn, we get nothing. Okay, so now let's test the next point in the system. So that would be the bracket where the upper and lower half of the steering columns connect. Way back in here. Right, still connected to the output of the horn. If we press the horn now, we get a good connection. Right, next spot to test is that universal. So I've connected test lead to the lower end of the universal, and let's press the horn and see what happens there. Okay, so we've got good connection at that point. Right, so that takes us to the steering box. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is check the ground continuity between that point on the universal and the vehicle ground. So here on the steering motor, wiper motor, is a good ground, and we have no continuity. Okay, so if we have a look at the steering box, it is mounted via shock mounts to the chassis here and on the other side of the chassis. Through there, hard to see in the dark. And its other connections to the car are obviously the end of the steering arms, which are through ball joints, which are also rubber insulated. So I'm guessing there should be a bonding strap somewhere on this steering box. I will have a look into that. So yes, a little bit of research has shown that underneath where, well, the grease nipple is on this steering box / steering rack, there should be a bonding strap connected to a relevant point nearby. So to test that everything is working, I've just connected a clip lead from there to the chassis, and let's see if it works. Oh, I've also temporarily plugged in the the horn button wire and reconnected the relay. So there we go. Yep, works. Very loud in a closed garage. Ow. Okay, so that's the problem. Let's sort out the solution. Right, so we need to make up a bonding strap. So we need some wire. It needs to be about 200mm long. I've got some fairly heavy gauge wire to use for this because the only crimps the hardware store had were the yellow ones for heavy gauge wire. So heavy gauge wire it is, because you don't want to mismatch stuff like that because you end up with a poor connection. So we want to take off about 6mm of insulation off the end, of each end, Now, a good way to do this using a Stanley knife is to actually roll the Stanley knife around the wire, so you're not actually doing any sawing of the copper. That way you're more likely to leave all the copper strands intact. A rule for if you were doing a connection on a military aircraft, more than 3 strands cut and you throw out the wire, or re-terminate it depending on how much length you've got. So I use some good quality crimpers. These ones have proper jaws that crimp both the where the copper goes and the insulation as well, and these give a good positive connection. So plop it in there. I usually just hold it tight and get everything positioned. You should have the wire such that you can see about 1 millimeter or 2 of the bare copper sticking out the end of the connection. And oops, that slipped on me. Just put it back in, make sure everything's right before you crimp it down. Crimp down right to the end till it releases. There we go. And we can see there you've got the crimp with the little dot in it showing you've got the copper end sorted, and the insulation's being pinched as well, making it nice and tight and not going to come loose. So same again at the other end, 6 millimeters, and just roll the wire through or across the blade. Use a nice sharp blade and make your life a lot easier. Again, put that in place, make sure we've got a little bit of copper exposed, and get it positioned right and crimp. There we go. Right, so we have a nice strong lead. Okay, so you can see here I've connected that all up, a new bonding strap, and now if we press the button we get a working horn. Still very loud. Ow. Right, so I've just got to tidy up the steering column and that's the job done. So I've got the horn surround and everything else sorted back on the steering wheel. With that done, I can move on to the next job, and that's going to be a big one, pulling out the transmission and getting that sorted out. So if you're interested in that, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon, and if you like this video, click that button, and if you've just got some questions or comments, hit the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I'm James, this is my Spitfire. Catch you next time. Bye.